Welcome to the Quizlex podcast series. I'm on today with General Counsel Andrew Stephens from MongoDB. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us on our podcast series today. We're going to spend some time and go through about 4 to 5, 6 different question areas. The general idea we're talking about today, as we discussed, is business process optimization for a general counsel's office. You've been a general counsel or an assistant general counsel for right around 20 years now. You have much to offer the legal world with your insights, especially less senior GCs. The first topic that I wanted to explore in terms of how to optimize business is hiring right. So my first question to you, Andrew, is, has hiring shifted or changed for a general counsel's office in the last 20 years?
Sure, sure. First of all, just I want to say thank you very much for having me, and very nice to be here. So hiring shifting, it absolutely has over the last 20 years. I think the three major things I see is there's been a bit of a change away from sort of generalization into it, or sorry, away from specialization into more generalization. And I think part of that is just because there's so many resources out there for people to check and use. And so if you are a specialist in some area, that's great, but at the same time, I think people are expecting, well, you can do a bit more than that. You can sort of go outside of your comfort zone the odd time. The second thing I'd say is location is much less important than it was. We can all remember sort of 20 years, or not all of us, but those of us old enough can remember over 20 years ago, where you really needed to show up at the office 5 days a week, and that was sort of expected, and not just because of the legal team you're working with, but the other clients, whether it's on the R&D side or sales side, they would all be in the office, and it was sort of generally expected you needed to be where the business was located. And then the third thing I would say that has changed is there's much more importance based on having a business impact to the legal advice given. I think 20 years ago you could sort of still get away with being that what I used to call a lawyer's lawyer, where you sort of in love with sort of the intricacies of the law, but at the end of the day you might not have been as business practical. I think today people are expecting you to understand the business and how your advice is going to be used, or what's the context for your advice.
Gotcha. So yes, the model's changed. The hybrid basis of the employment has changed, and the idea that lawyers need to be much more than just a lawyer's lawyer has definitely changed it as well too. I
Yeah.
realize we'll go back. This is Kevin Pod. I'm a senior client advisor at Quizlex, doing this. What about in terms of hiring? When you think of the criteria that you've used to hire, has that shifted? Has technology changed the things that you look for in doing hiring for a general counsel's office?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both technology changing, and then I think the thoughts around hiring have evolved quite a bit. I think initially when I first started my career and started hiring people, you sort of look at skills, and it's like, okay, does the person
Mhm.
have X, Y, Z? Did they go to good law school? Did they have they worked maybe
Right.
in-house at a similar company? Now it's much more, it's much more refined. We look at success, like what success has this person had? What, where we sort of take it as a given. You've got the skills, and now like let's apply that to this particular situation. And obviously we want to decide, is this person going to succeed in this role at this company at this time? So we just I'd say a little bit more refined about what we look for in people.
Good. Wonderful. Anything else to add on sort of hiring right in the modern general counsel world, for lack of a better word, Andrew?
I think one thing I would say is in the hybrid world, you need to still pay attention to the people side of this equation, right? Like I think we forget, both as general counsels, but also as junior lawyers, that this is a people business, right? Like you do have to know the people you're advising. You have to know the clients. You have to know the colleagues on the legal team. And so you need to find, if you're not located close to them, you need to find a way to interact with them. Obviously, it's not ideal being over Zoom or some other communication tool, but you do have to still do it, right? Like spend time building those relationships. The old phrase that relationships do matter is I would say more true now in the hybrid world than it was pre-hybrid.
Right, and my take on it, technology both allows that to happen a little bit more easily, right? And
Yep.
then also can be a hindrance as well, too, right? Sometimes it's amazing how much you can meet someone who's done you've never met in person because you've done video calls with them, right? And
Yep.
that wasn't so true years ago. So
Yep.
wonderful. Um,
Yep.
let's shift a little bit. Let's talk about second topic for our podcast series here today: artificial intelligence, or AI. First, you'd agree with the statement that AI has basically saved the world and is worth every single bit of the overhype it's been given, right? Yeah, I'm glad you laughed. I'm not that funny, but yeah, of course I'm kidding, right? Regarding AI, though, I do have a few questions, right? There has been a lot of interest and, of course, some hype, some hyperbola regarding AI, particularly generative AI, right? So, from your perspective, as you've seen it evolve over the time period you've been at GC and the time period AI has been introduced, is AI here to stay? And can it actually save a GC time and money? If so, how?
Yeah, I also just remind the audience we're still in the way early days of AI, right? Like, I mean, this is like going back for those again old enough to remember of the first email you sent like in the early 90s, like where it's like, wow, I just communicated with someone across the street over email. Like, it's very cool, useful. It's maybe slightly, but over time, like how important have all those things become? Like over 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it become really important to be able to communicate like that or in other ways or use obviously use of the internet. And I think that's where we're at right now. It's the early days of AI. There's no doubt in my mind that, as we look out 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it is definitely here to stay. It definitely is something that will save people time and money. But I'd say that my advice at this point is, make sure you measure the impact. Don't just say, okay, well, it has AI, so it has to be good. We've seen lots of indications in the last year where people have sort of relied on AI to their detriment. And I don't think you can do that quite yet. I think you really have to make sure you look at the actual results. And AI is not a panacea. It's not going to make you suddenly a better lawyer. It's a tool that can make you more efficient. And certainly as a GC, you look across your legal teams and almost every area that GCs are responsible for, you could see an AI tool that either can help today or will develop in the future and will be helpful for sure. Like, I mean, again, we've sort of seen this for maybe 2 years of really, of experience, but, look out 5, 10 years and it's definitely going to have a big impact.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? So it's early stages, not brand new, but still early stages. Want to have an ability to measure the impact, and right. Are there any pitfalls or areas where you really would like to offer some guidance to again to newer GCs, specifically in the AI area, things to watch out for?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, like relying on it is without sort of checking and making sure that it's giving you the output you want. Like don't just take, well, it's AI, it's good. Make sure you look at what it's outputting and is it saving you money? Like I had a conversation with someone about a contract AI tool where it's great, it does this, and I'm okay, but what do you have to do with it? Like, well, I have to load the contract, and then I have to read what the discrepancies are, or what gets flagged, and then I have to, either create a markup or use the markup that's been created by the tool. And like, okay, I said, like, okay, well, if before AI, that whole process might take you, say, 4 hours. Like, does this new process, take less time? And if so, how much less time? And the answer was yes, it takes less time, but it doesn't go from 4 to 0. It goes from 4 to maybe 2 because you still have
Right.
to look through what the product is. It makes it quicker, but it doesn't solve the problem completely. And I do think down the road, there'll be tools good enough that it probably will solve, and maybe it doesn't go to 0, but maybe it goes to 30 minutes kind of thing. Like it'll slowly get better and better and save more and more time. But I think the pitfall is sort of expecting perfection right off the bat, and then that's just not going to happen. I think we have to get used to using the tool, and the tools have to get better.
Right. I mean, you're still going to be responsible with the tool or without the tool for knowing what's in the contract and advising on risk regarding the contract and how to perform the contract. the
Yeah,
tool should help in that aspect. If you measure how long it takes you to get to those end results, then you can see if there's a measurable impact of the artificial intelligence. So yeah, that
exactly,
makes makes
exactly.
makes
Yeah.
makes perfect sense. And you mentioned the contracts area. Have you had experience using AI at any of the places you've been over the last 20 years in the contracts area? And if so, is it sort of traditional AI or the generative AI that you've used?
Yeah, yeah. So the generative AI, and definitely have used it with, tried a number of tools, all recently, all at MongoDB, because really before that haven't been really good enough to rely on. They've existed for a long time, but there wasn't anything that was really, you know, worth me investing the time to use. But now that is not the case. There certainly are tools out there that are worth using. Um, and again, I think that they're good now. I think they'll be great and then excellent down the road.
Gotcha. Um, Besides the applicability to the contract lifecycle management, right, to the CLM process, are there other functions within a GC office that you think AI could have a good applicability to?
Yeah, I think with any type of communication, AI is very good at. So like drafting initial emails to folks. Again, you can't at the moment rely on it to be 100%. But if I'm writing a long summary of the current status of say an employment law case or something like that, you can allow it to take the first cut and load in what you want to be part of that communication and then take it from there. As most lawyers know, it's much easier to fix something that has been started by someone else than to start from scratch, right? Like
Oh
it's
God,
just
yeah.
faster. But so all anything to do with communication, very good at. Anything to do with research, very good at. I think and almost all areas of law have a little bit of both of those things.
It'd be interesting to revisit this answer in literally in 10 years, right?
Yes, oh, I'd love to. Yeah,
Like you put it in a time box, go back 10 years, and then say, oh, like, this is what we thought, and this is where it wound up in 10 years. Or if we could have done this 10 years ago, right?
yes,
When
yeah.
AI was really nascent, very,
Yeah.
very new. So
Yeah, yeah,
interesting.
no, I think if I look back 10 years, I'd say 10 years ago, I would have been even more skeptical about, is it really, but now, like, I think a bunch of people, including, senior execs at this company and our board members all think like, the legal function is going to go away in 10 years. And I'm not sure that's going to happen
Right.
because I think what people miss, like the non-lawyers miss, is that a fair bit of what lawyers do is translating the legal answer to sort of a business scenario, business case, and I think AI helps speed that up, but you always want to have the quality of someone doing that, and maybe a tool will be better than lawyers do it today, but it is going to take some time. I mean, maybe we'll get there in 10 years. I think it's probably more like 20 longer, and then still think for people who are really good at that translation skill, I think there's always going to be a need for them.
We can look back at it in our retirement and see how it went, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, let's move away from the AI area for a minute. Unless there's anything else you wanted to add to that, Andrew, before
No, I
we,
think I
we
think that's all good. Yep.
Okay, fair enough. Let's talk about legal technology in general, right? Not specific to AI, but just in legal technology as it's grown in the use by general counsels in their corporations. So there's been a consistent growth over the last, I say 20 years, it's probably longer than that, but it feels like 20 years is a good parameter to talk about the growth of legal software
Yep.
and how it's helped GCs. First question is the learning curve faster for a general counsel given the state of legal technology today? And then a corollary to that is what are the underlying skills? Are they different? You talked about hiring, but we'll talk about it just in general. If you've been a GC for a while and you're using technology, how does that change your everyday? So,
Sure.
bad way to ask three questions in there,
That's okay.
but yeah, yeah, and
I'll
you
let,
know where I'm going. So
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. So I think, I mean, the sort of impact of legal software, in the last 10 years is significant. And what it does, no matter what area, it sort of frees up the sort of arduous tasks that a GC would have had 10 years ago, like whether it's billing or, finding documents that are somewhere stored that you don't know where they are,
Mhm.
or whether it's reviewing contracts, whatever the tool is, it sort of frees up GCs to spend less time on that and more time thinking about, okay, like how am I going to use this document, or how am I going to, what argument am I going to make in this case, or things like that. The things that you're really paid to do, you've got more time to sort of think sort of above the fray, so to speak. And so the learning curve has to be faster, right? Because you get more chance to really exercise the muscle that you're trying to improve. Um, and then for a good GC now, I think you have to just be better now at sort of using those tools, right? Like don't fight them. Don't be sort of one of these
Right.
people like I've been a lawyer for 20 years and I know how to do it. Like it's like, okay, but it's changed. The market's changed. Like you have to be very adaptable. You have to react, to different types of technology. Like I've had three in-house jobs, and uh, you know all three companies. When I started at one, the next company didn't even exist, and then the same happened again.
Oh,
Like
really?
yeah,
Wow.
just because I went from a Logitech, the mice and keyboard manufacturer, to LinkedIn, which everyone knows,
Didn't
and
exist
then
when
from
you
LinkedIn
started
to
at Logitech.
MongoDB,
Yeah.
and so like these technologies and like the technology of MongoDB didn't exist, 15 years ago, right? Like it's new technology moving in a different direction, and you sort of if you can't react or you can't sort of think, okay, things are going to be different next year than they were this year, or the company's evolving, then you just won't be effective at your job. So I think that is probably the biggest sort of skill set I would say for young GCs is make sure you are able to evolve with the market and the developments in technology.
That's fantastic advice, Andrew, right? And that advice before there was a technology aspect of that, it was always right, be an adult learner, be a continuous learner, always think that there's more to learn.
Yep.
So if I'm hearing your answer correctly, it's that's true and add technological tools to that belt in terms of learning. Don't think that even that stuff you learned, what, 5, 7 years ago, is going to carry you the next 10 years,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And that
yeah.
it is
Even maybe you have to learn, but you also have to adapt, right?
right.
Those are sometimes two different things, and I think that adapting is very important.
Yeah. Fabulous, fabulous. Let's move away from technology and talk about an area near and dear to everyone's heart, data, right? Data
Especially
management.
MongoDB. Yes.
Yes, yes, yeah, of course, right, right, right. Everyone, but particularly you. Yeah, exactly. We live in the information age, right? The data available to the world, but especially to lawyers and general counsels, has, exponentially increased due to the increase in technology. Everybody knows this. This isn't some amazing new statement. Oh my God, really? Are we? Um, but let's talk about the data that's available. So first, is reviewing data and a skill that you look for when you're hiring or when you're training a GC, someone who's adept at understanding data, looking around how to move it, how to manage data. That's kind of my first question in the area of data.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is important, and sometimes people in more recent times like forget about that skill, like because the data is always available and around, and so people think, oh, do I need someone who can actually read and interpret this contract? And the answer to me is yes. Like that skill is very important because if you don't have that skill, then you sort of wonder, okay, well, how is the person going to interpret things in this context properly, right? Like you need to be able to sort of read, translate, and sort of and then communicate your translation to a client. I think that skill is really important and frankly often overlooked in lawyers.
That makes sense. And are there specific types of legal materials that are rich in data that general counsels need a strategy for in terms of communicating that data, storing, managing, privacy? So, like, what are those materials that are really, really data rich?
Yeah. Yeah, I would sort of almost flip that question and say, what isn't, right? Because there's so much
Okay.
data and everything that gets moved around. Typical email has a fair bit of, either personal data or sort of business, at least confidential, if not sort of privacy implications of the data. But for us, I mean, the big thing are obviously anything to do with customers. Like if a customer is storing something, that becomes essentially something that needs to be dealt with and managed with sort of privacy and security at top of mind. And then our own contracts with customers, our HR data about our people. I mean, it's sort of I think, as I said, it's hard to find things that don't have significant data attached to them where we need to be very careful of privacy and security.
Right. Whether it's internal data within your company or external data going out, it
External
all
data.
seems to be
Yeah,
fairly rich in data.
yeah.
Here's the $10,000 question, right? And really interested to hear your take on it, given your experience as a GC, but also particularly you've been in this industry, right? Who has the ultimate responsibility for owning the data? Is it the company? Is it IT within the company? Is it the, chief information security officer? Is it the general counsel's office, like chief privacy officer? Like in the end, whose sort of neck is on the line when you talk about who owns the responsibility for data management?
Yeah, I think the correct answer here is all of the above, and I say that sort of somewhat, as a joke, but I don't mean it as a joke. It is very important that everybody you just mentioned is thinking about data security and privacy every day, and you can't operate, and I know this from personal experience, you can't operate like if you think, okay, I'm the general counsel, I'm going to control all the data. This kind of, I can't do that. I don't have the ability. I don't have access. I don't have insight into doing that. Frankly, same with CISOs. Like they do their best, and they sort of think like what are the things that could go wrong, and how do we protect, and what should we build into place. But they can't see everything. They can't see around every corner. They don't they're not on a call with a customer that's being recorded or whatever. Like they don't have
Right.
access to it all. So absolutely everybody at the company, like, and I know it's a bit trite to say that, but it's absolutely true, is responsible. And frankly, like who's next on the line? I think all of our necks are on the line. Like I think if things go wrong, it's like you can't sort of say, well, I did my job and the CISO didn't or the chief privacy officer didn't. It's like that's not good enough. Like it's sort of a we have to get this done, and if it means you have to bend over backwards to help someone else do their job better, then that's what you have to do.
That makes sense. And when you think about the little time machine we talked about, I go 10 years back and 10 years forward. I think 10 years ago, that answer that everyone at the company is ultimately responsible for proper data management might not have come to your lips, right? It might
Yep.
not have been so apparent, not 50 years ago, but just 10 years ago, we would have
Yep.
said, oh, there's a specific silo within the company that's responsible for data management. That's
Yep.
just IT that handles
Yep.
data, or that's
Yep.
just whoever. But right, it has really evolved over time. One, because of the vastness of the data, and two, because of the information within there that's being disseminated. So,
And
uh,
I would even say it's even stronger than that. Is it's accepted now. Like before, it would have been like, okay, that's not my like a typical CEO
right,
10 years ago would be like, I don't want to know anything about data or privacy security. Like you guys just take care of that. I
I'm
hired
just
you
a
to do
lawyer.
that, and
Right,
let me know when it's done, kind of thing. Like not anymore. Like I can tell
right,
you,
right.
it's front of mind for our CEO, CFO, for our entire board. It gets discussed, asked about all the time. Like it is a core part, and it's not just because we're in the data business. I'd say every one of our customers, that is true as well. It's
Right.
front of mind. It's something that everybody is paying attention to and doing their best. And frankly, part of that is because we've had so many issues, not so much at MongoDB, although we have had some issues, but across the industry, there's been so many uh, things that have gone on, whether it's hacks or whether it's you know leaks or software issues, whatever. Like it creates big harm, and people are paying attention to that.
Right. In some sense, to sort of put a summarize your overall response, right? The whole company's responsible for data, including the GC, and any GC who believes it's someone else's thing and someone else's responsibility is already behind the eight ball, right? And
Absolutely,
yeah, that that
100%.
that, that
I,
philosophy is already a problem, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say to younger GCs, like the head of IT, anybody in IT, anybody in the CISO org, anybody on the legal team, like if they have an issue or a question about privacy, security, my door is open. Like I'm
Right. Right.
happy to talk about it, happy to help give my thoughts, and we should be planning as a legal team, how we deal with all these things, but we have to collaborate with all these other folks
Got
because, as I said before, like we don't have insight into everything that happens, and no one person does, right?
Right. Fair, Andrew. Let's move to a closely related area from data, security, right?
Yep.
You can't have one without the other in a sense. Very similar question, right? When you talk about the security of data, who has responsibility for how to store it, what to store, how long to hold it? How do you deal with a breach or deal with avoiding or try to avoid a breach, excuse me, deal with
Yep.
avoiding a breach, yeah, et cetera. So yeah, very generic question, but like security, obviously there's a security office, but tell me your
Yeah.
learned experience in that
Yeah,
area. Yeah.
it's really the same as I just mentioned in terms of everyone. Like it takes everyone, like i.e. like IT needs to understand what the legal requirements are, or what other compliance aspects of storing uh, data and keeping it secure. Obviously, the CISO office is focused on that. And again, it's everybody, and it's for the same reasons. It's we all need to sort of figure out, A, how do we make sure problems don't happen? The B, if they do happen, what are we going to do about it?
Right, right. And have you seen changes in that, I don't want to say philosophy, but changes in that in the security tools and process over time, right? 20 years ago, 10 years ago to today.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, just think of what you see on a consumer level, like moving from everyone uses the same password for every different website kind of thing, and now people don't do
What are you
that.
talking about?
I hope people don't do that. But password tools are created, and people are using other means to keep passwords secure. But you know, then dual authentication wasn't a thing, 10, 15 years ago. And now, like, I think just about every website you go to, or should every website you go to should have, ability to use 2FA to get in, because it's important. I'm sure many of you read scary articles about if someone were able to hack your phone, what they could do to all your information, right? Like, it's very, very scary. And obviously 2FA helps that a lot because, if it's set up with your, if your data is protected by 2FA, you're much less at risk of someone being able to take over your whole identity.
Right. Just talking to your phone, for example, one of the things that I've really thought is a great security measure is I have so much facial authentication
Yep.
now for things. And can it be misused? Well, I'm sure there's ways to do it, right? I'm not a security expert, but that's even one more stretch. My own computer has the fingerprint,
Yep.
but uh,
Yep.
I'll set
Yep.
the name that's spaced. Bioauthentication, I think it's called, right? Authentication.
Yep. Yep.
Um, uh, any last things on security and data that you sort of any gems of wisdom you want to impart that we haven't covered, Andrew?
Yeah, I would just say if people are finding it hard to convince others in the organization, like sometimes, you've got a young founder of a company who's just, laser focused on one thing and that's being successful. And things like security, sometimes like, oh, well, like I get security is important, but let's like we've got to get this customer, or we've got to get this new product out, or whatever. Like just try and push like the long run, like nobody gets anywhere if there's a security breach, right? Like you get absolutely, you sort of crush the value created by your product by not paying attention to security. Like I think, I mean, I hope we're beyond that now, where we have to convince people. But if you are feeling pushback on that, always be thinking like the long run viability of any product relies on security of data.
That's great. That's great advice. We've covered a number of different areas, Andrew. We talked about hiring and those changes over time and how to kind of hire right, how technologies impacted that, artificial intelligence, and both how it's new, not brand new, how it'll change over time, and then how legal technology has affected the responsibilities of a general counsel, data and security. So one, I wanted to thank you for your time and answering these questions. It's invaluable for newer GCs to hear this from someone who's been around the block, right, and still doing it right now. So I want to throw a couple very generic ones out there to kind of let you riff a little bit, as we say,
Sure.
right? Yeah, so a couple, not softballs, but easy ones. So in general, over the time, what are some challenges that you've overcome at any of the companies you've been at that you can impart that to kind of newer GCs?
Sure. I would say one of the biggest things is like I'm not a technologist. Like I don't have an engineering undergrad. And all of the companies
Join the
I've worked
club.
for have had fairly significant,
Right.
technology aspects to them, where you sort of have to like, what is this person talking about? You're having a conversation with an engineer who's designing a brand new mouse, say, like, and you know, so I think getting over that and being comfortable knowing, okay, like I'm never going to be an engineer, but I can understand what their mind is looking for, what they need out of me. Just getting yourself more and more comfortable with technology from a layperson's view, right? Like you don't have to, as I said, you don't have to be an expert, but understand the sort of the layperson's view. And if people are familiar with MongoDB, like it's a pretty I would say deep technology company. Like
Right.
the way things work, it's very difficult for a layperson to come in and understand. But just do your best at sort of interpreting what are the important things, what like to a customer, to an executive here at your company, what are the important things that they're going to need me to understand. So I think that's one of the biggest things I would say is don't back away from technology. Just embrace it and try and learn. And you're not going to learn it in a day. You just sort of take small bites and slowly you sort of turn around and you go, did I just say that? Because 5 years ago I wouldn't have been able to say that. Like just understanding it more and more, and you surprise yourself by how quickly you get up to speed.
Great advice. And from a personal risk, I could not agree with that more. I don't have a technical background, right? I have a business background, then went to law school, practiced for a while, and then I have been in legal technology for 20 years. But I'm amazed sometimes at the things I've learned over time, right? And can speak to where I haven't had any formal training. I've done a little bit of side education, but what I've done is exactly what you just said, which is pay attention, learn to understand what you need to hear and understand to address those things, and then kind of be able to speak the language at the level that you need to get your job done to understand it. So really good advice. Again, maybe the educational background is changing a bit, but still most lawyers don't have that kind of a background, right? What we're talking about is, I don't know percentage wise, but it's high percentage. So
Yeah. Yeah, and
mm,
I think you're right. I think the education background is changing. People are
it
more
is
into
bad.
the STEM now, and this would be probably in a few more lawyers with the STEM background. But I don't think that's a necessity. I think it's you can learn it no matter what your background. You just have to sort of embrace it and sort of dive in and show an interest. And as I said, you slowly turn around, and in a few years, you become an expert in something that you really had no background in.
Right, right. Great advice. Very last a question, right? This is a chance to thump your chest a bit. What recent victories or victories you've done, things you've done over the last 10, 15, 20 years that you think, this is something that I was able to accomplish, or my office was, or my company was, and you want to share that, really anything. Wide open question at the end.
Yeah, I think for me, when I look back, just at my time at MongoDB, I've been here just over 10 years. I look at the legal team we've built here and the quality of the people, both as lawyers and just as people who enjoy life, or some of them building families, all this type of thing.
Just as
I look at
humans, right?
this
Yeah.
and I'm just like, this is fantastic. Like, I try not to be proud, because I think being proud is a dangerous thing. But I look at this team that we've built here, and I'm just amazed. It's like, where did this come from? How do we, I feel like we're lucky to be able to work together as a team. One thing I stress in hiring and obviously in developing people is teamwork is really important. But sometimes you just see, or you even hear about, someone on the team did something else for somebody else on the team, and nobody asked them to do it, and you just feel
Oh,
great.
that's
Like it's
wonderful.
almost like being a parent where your kid does something great that you didn't ask them to do, and you think like, it's kind of special. I think that's the thing that I'm sort of most proud of, is like building this team that functions very well at a very high level. It's a very, MongoDB is a fast growing, very demanding business. There's a lot going on, a lot of changes that are constant. And so it's certainly not a place where people can coast, but the people embrace the challenge. They work very hard, but do it in the right way. And so far we've had, I'd say, great success as a legal team.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think it's great to be proud of that, to see those things that happen. I remember when my 15-year-old son, we were headed on a family vacation, and all of a sudden one day he packed the entire car as I was like eating breakfast, getting ready, thinking I was about to do it, and he just did it on his own. And I was, it was one of those moments where you're like, okay, I guess he has been paying attention, right? He
Yeah,
has been,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And I was blown away and very proud. So it's
Yeah.
great to hear that on a work basis as well, too. So
Yeah.
um,
Either that or he was tired of waiting for you to finish your breakfast.
probably that. Come on, Dad, let's get moving.
No, no,
Um,
it is, but it is sort of great to see that you sort of, had an impact and as I say, as a parent, you sort of see things like that and it's great.
Yeah. And it's been a wonderful use of time. Thank you again very much, right? I know you're a busy person. I've got a lot of responsibilities. And thank you again from Quizlex, from myself, and from the GC community, right, and giving back. So very much appreciate it. Thanks again. And hopefully this will come out great when we see the recording. So
Great. My pleasure. Very nice to meet you and thanks for the opportunity.
thank you.